Hey everyone, how you doing today? Today's going to be a huge day, I think, for the One Rental at a Time channel. I put something out, I think, on Thursday about wanting to interview new investors, new members of the One Rental at a Time course, because I wanted to see really where they were at, what they were doing, what kind of questions. I'm here to create action and activity and better financial futures. And lo and behold, 120 minutes later, I had 5 people confirmed, and we're doing 4 of those calls today. First up is Sean. He reached out. He's got the 8 o'clock slot, and let's bring Sean onto the show. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, good morning, Mike. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. Um, I guess a brief introduction and full disclosure, I was at a wedding yesterday, so might not be as fresh as I could be.
Fair enough.
It's a great way to start the morning though.
That's funny.
So my name's Sean. I'm 31 years old. I work as a urban planner in the Bay Area.
Okay.
I was living in San Francisco, and actually my girlfriend and I signed our lease about a month before the pandemic began.
Oh.
And we moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. So we got the full pandemic experience.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for that. It's been an interesting year in San Francisco, no doubt. It's been an interesting year in California, but as I said in our daily show, Disneyland's about to open. So, the happiest place on earth is about to be open. So we can look forward to that. I'm not going, by the way, but hopefully some others do. So Sean, what made you sign up for the course? Plunk down the credit card or whatever it was. You spend $200 on some guy you saw on YouTube, or maybe you read the book. What made you say yes to that?
Yeah, so I actually saw you speak in person about a year and a half ago in Oakland.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I can't remember the venue, but it was on San Pablo Avenue.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed your presentation, and I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people at the event, and I thought the information you gave was very frank and down to earth, and you were able to just kind of cut through some of the fat and answer some of the questions that we were all thinking about. After that, I just kind of subscribed to your YouTube channel, and I've been kind of in the background listening to your financial news every morning, which has been really helpful because I think you, as a economics and finance guy, understand things a little bit better. So I've learned a lot in that situation. But I finally ponied up and put the money down to join your course. And I think it's going to be helpful to mostly network and crunch some numbers. So yeah, and a little bit about myself. I actually purchased my first home in 2013.
Okay.
I used a FHA in Sacramento.
Oh, yeah.
And it just was happenstance that kind of had been working for a couple years out of college and needed a place to live, and kind of thought, why not?
Yeah.
So I used all my savings to buy it, but ended up being a great deal because somehow it's appreciated quite well.
Yeah, 2013 Sacramento, you're probably up, 60%, I would guess.
It seems to, something like that. But because of that, actually, after our lease ended in San Francisco, after a year, I did use some of the equity to purchase another single family home in Sacramento. So we've actually moved back. We've taken advantage of work from home opportunity. And it's been great because our mortgage is about $1,000 less than our rent.
And I'm guessing you have more space.
Yeah, we have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath right next to the American River. So
awesome.
It's been great.
Well, very cool. Thank you for that introduction. These mentor sessions, these are the first time I'm doing them. So I don't really have a format, but I thought maybe you might have some questions for me, Sean, as we get started.
Yeah, I do actually.
Awesome.
So, the house I purchased in 2013,
Mhm.
um, I lived in it until 2017
Mhm.
in Sacramento, and then I
Yep.
went to grad school, and I rented it out in 2017 for the market rate then. And I actually haven't, it's a great couple. They're phenomenal. They're around my age,
Mhm.
but I haven't raised the rent
Mhm.
since then.
Mhm.
Um, Partly, this is what I kind of wanted to get your opinion on
Mhm.
because the rent's covering the mortgage with a couple $100 cash flow,
Uh-huh.
but they're great tenants, so I don't want to jeopardize having them leave.
Sure.
Um, so how often do you raise rent? Is
Mhm.
it an annual thing, and by how much?
So let's answer this question two ways, right? So the first, I don't know, 15 or so years of my investing career, if I had that situation where they were great tenants, weren't a hassle, paid rent on time, uh, a good tenant could I would never go more than 3 years, right? If the general rule of thumb with property manager, because I had a property manager the whole time, is if they paid their rent on time for 12 months in a house, they would automatically get no bump the next year. If we would go through the next year and maybe the market rate was only up $50 or maybe $100, I wouldn't bother it, right? Because for me, what I'm trying to avoid is turnover. Turnover is what kills landlords. But I would always raise rent that third year because you never wanted to get too far behind, because then any jump would be more astronomical. So that's the first answer. That's what I did the first 15 years or so. Um, and actually, because it is a single family home, that strategy still holds. But I do want to answer it for the audience that may be watching this. If you were to own multifamily, right, so a duplex or above in California, because of what Gavin Newsom did on rent control, uh, you now need to raise rents every year a little bit, because if you don't, you never get it back. And um, so like in my
Now,
what? Go ahead.
well, is that a kind of red line difference between multifamily and single family?
Absolutely. It's
So,
in California's rent control. Absolutely. Single family homes owned by individuals such as yourself are not part of rent control under the current legislation, but units, all the way down to duplexes are, right? So that's something to definitely watch out for.
and has that changed at all with the zoning? How I think, for instance, Sacramento and a bunch of Bay Area communities are talking about getting rid of single family zoning districts.
They haven't tied those together. It's basically based on units. How many rents are you collecting for that APN, right? That parcel number, right? Again, I mean, originally when the legislation was written, I'm like, okay, they're going to talk commercial, which in our world's 5 units and above. But no, the legislation was written all the way down to duplexes. Um, yeah, it's a
So,
California thing.
Michael, how does that conversation go? If I'm the handling this rental
Well,
directly,
let's just use some real numbers, and they don't have to be the exact numbers, but tell me how far off you are, right? So if you're at 1,700 and market's 1,800, I probably wouldn't bother. But if you haven't raised rents since 2017 in Sacramento, you could be $300 or $400 under market.
that's the case at this point. And and with the house I purchased now, the rent would only be maybe 200 off from my mortgage, my PITI.
Mhm.
That's what you call it. So I had really thought that with this first rental, maybe the house I'm in now, it's a primary residence, so we're going to live here as long as possible. But if I did turn it into a rental,
Sure.
you know, they the first one was a smoking hot deal.
Yeah.
This one's an okay deal, but it's somewhere we can live.
Right.
That's not the craziness of San Francisco.
Amen to that.
So I did kind of think, well, these kind of balance each other out. And
Yeah.
did
But-
so,
So again, what I would do in that situation, and again, let's be clear, I'm always straight up with folks. I've never self-managed. So part of this is I've never had to have that difficult conversation, right? Because between me and the tenant, there's a PM, right? So I guide the PM does the dirty work, if you will. But what I would do in this situation, let's just assume you're $400 under market. Let's just assume. What I would let them know is, hey, over the last four years or so, my costs have gone up. I'm sure your insurance is more expensive. I'm sure taxes are up. And I would tell them, thank you for doing everything. I'm gonna have to raise rents. I'd give them a 60-day notice or something, and say, hey, rents are going to go up $200. That does a couple of things. First off, they're going to know that they're still under market. Could that be the thing that sparks them to move? Maybe, but probably very unlikely. Sacramento market is very hot. You are in the driver's seat. And if they did leave, again, you're still, you could jump all the way up to 400 or maybe even 500, push the envelope a little bit. But that's probably what I would be doing. I would be kind. I would only go halfway. I would give them 60-day notice. I would be very clear. And if you want, you can even highlight, hey, in 2017, my insurance was, I don't know, $897. And now in 2021, it's, $1256 or whatever, right? Because you're not here for charity, right? You're not here to lose money, what I call an alligator in the book. Costs for landlords are up the last 4 years.
Right. And I just recently, last year, replaced the air conditioning and heating unit, which was a $5,000 hit.
Amen.
And yeah, and also got it looks like the chimney doesn't have structural integrity. So I'm going to replace that. So I'm going to replace that with electric heater. But you're right. There's expenses. That sounds great, 400 to 500. But I don't think I'm going to do that to these tenants. I think it would be more like,
yeah, you just do it halfway. Yeah, just do it halfway. Again, by doing it halfway, you do two things. First, you take care of someone who's taking care of you, because again, they're still under market. And you basically, what I would do I feel good either way. If they stay, awesome. If they leave, don't care, right? Because again, if they left, you just take it to market, maybe even goose it a little bit and see what happens. So I think that's the right answer in that specific situation.
Okay. So the next question is, well, first off, thank you. The second question, I guess, is, I work in planning. So the big discussion for the last couple of years has been densification, building more next to BART, building where there's jobs. With that, we've seen multiple jurisdictions doing rezoning. So I've had a lot of rezoning projects in particular. And now the big kind of hoopla is the single family to multifamily. Mm-hmm. And even some friends have kind of asked questions like, is this going to diminish property value or is it going to increase property value? My general understanding is that, well, now single family homes are more rare, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, so let's just catch everybody up on, because they're not maybe specific with California. One of the things California is doing, folks, is we have an affordability problem in much of the state. And something they've done, I think it was actually January 1st of 2020, I think. Might have been 19. I think it was 2020. Basically, they allowed single family homes to have what's called ADUs, accessory dwelling units, basically making it multifamily. Right. There are still setback laws, and we're not going to get into all of that. But basically, you have a house, you could add a mother-in-law or extra unit in the back, with the idea of being collect some rent. That's what we're talking about here. So I'm just going to refer to that as an ADU. Is that a fair thing to say, Sean?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah. Not only can you actually build an ADU, you could potentially tear down the whole building and put a multifamily on it.
Yeah, most people though are going to. But
yeah, exactly. Most people are not.
Yeah, most people look at it as just adding a mother-in-law unit, usually what it's called, so an ADU. So what I think is going to happen with that is, I think over time being 3 to 6 years from now, the single family home with a big backyard is going to become more valuable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be because of rarity, but I don't think that's going to be it. I think it's going to be because you can cover the mortgage. I think the whole house hacking theme, or the having an Airbnb in the back, or whatever you want to be, I think that's going to add real value in 3 to 4 years. Anybody doing it today is having a hard time, because what do people want to do? Well, they want to take, 100 grand out of their house with an equity line. They want to go build an ADU from one of these off the shelf vendors. And then they want to go do a burr, right? They want to go refi, pay off their equity line, and move out. What people are finding, at least as they tell me, is the appraisers are having a really, really hard time
Mm.
adding value to the house because they don't have the comps or the comparables, right? So, in theory, you take 100K out of your house, you put it into the ADU, you want to go back and refi, you're hoping to get something like 150K in value. So you get, the whole equity spread or sweat equity or all of that. It's not really working out for folks in this first year. Now, some of that you could blame on the pandemic, maybe, but I think people fail to realize that part of this whole burr method, whether you're buying a junker and cashing out, or you're buying a single family in the Bay Area or Sacramento or LA or wherever, and adding a unit, you have to get the appraiser to recognize the value of what you've added. And that is not happening in this first year. But I think as it happens more and more and more, you go from the one, because right now appraisers are overworked. They're doing all these refis. It's hard for them. If they're doing an ADU add-on or burr or value add, like 1 out of 100 appraisals, it's tough, and
Yeah.
they're not going to get the value. But you let this roll 3 years, and now it's like 1 out of 10, and we have some sales of granny flats or mother-in-law units or whatever they're going to be advertised. It will help. I can't imagine a good ADU not adding value by 2025. But it's going to be a little rocky this first year, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, actually, about the appraisals. And I hadn't really thought about that because, right, we are at the beginning of this. Before, people might have just converted their garages or added, or
Yep.
split the room. But this is sort of uncharted territory.
Yep.
Where I thought it was really interesting, I had a site visit for work up in Paradise,
Mhm.
town that burned down, sadly, and there's some interesting stuff going on there as well, where I saw people building, what previously was a single family home. Now they're building uh, multifamily units on it, or apartments on it,
Mhm.
or people are building modular. You know,
Yeah.
I think this the because I've looked at ADUs as well in the backyard, but they're just expensive.
Yeah. They,
You
they
know,
don't pencil yet. Yeah.
yeah, they don't pencil yet, and it's a little bit. I don't know if people can get used to having somebody living in their backyard just quite yet. We're not quite there yet.
Mhm.
Cool. So the next question I have for you. So I see you talk a lot about the affordability index, and
Mhm.
it sounds like this kind of magic number you cite every time you want to check the health of the market, I
Yeah,
suppose.
for sure.
But you know, Sacramento's hovering around 48 at the moment.
Cool. Well, hey, congratulations for knowing it. Not everybody does. So, all right, go ahead.
Thanks. And I guess back in '07, '08, it
Mhm.
went all the way down to the low 20s.
Mm.
But I'm curious, what would you do, or what do you do?
Mhm.
I think I know what you did last time,
Mhm.
but is there anything different, like when the bells ring, back down to the 20s, 10s in the Bay Area?
Well, so the Bay Area doesn't matter. I have one place here. I'm never going to sell it. It's where I live. It doesn't matter, right? And I owe nothing on it, so it doesn't affect me. But let's talk about Fresno, because Fresno is Sacramento in your case for me. Um, so Fresno, I think, is 47 or 48 as well today. So congratulations for knowing it, right? If you're in California, go to car.org. That's where it is, California Association of Realtor, published monthly. Um, but but this is basically what happens, right? It suddenly goes from 48. For me, it's 20 or 21. Let's just call it 20 for round numbers. That's a red flag for me. It gets to 20. I will go and look at all my residential properties, so fourplexes and below, and I will probably list or sell half of them. If Fresno ever got to like 17, maybe 16, certainly 15, I would sell everything, everything. Now, what does that mean? Everything. That means everything. And what I would do is I would sit on a pile of cash for as long as it took. I might be in cash for 3 years. Who knows? Because what did I learn last time? The affordability index can get low and go lower, and the market can be wonky for a long time. But I've looked at the affordability index in California for decades, and it is a pretty clear indicator that when it gets that low, we are in a bubble. But that doesn't mean a bubble has to pop, or at least pop immediately. So A, I would start selling. B, I would be very comfortable sitting on cash, which freaks people out. Oh my God, you're losing to inflation, blah. No, I'm not. Cash for me at that point would be an opportunity cost on the future. I know with certainty that prices would adjust eventually for some reason. It could be an interest rate rise. It could be a war. It could be a recession. I don't know what it's going to be. It could be a black swan like a pandemic. I don't know. But I will just sit on cash, sit on cash, sit on cash, wait probably years, and then I would pounce just like I did in the book.
And I mean, what about, would you just do a 1031 exchange, or how would you make sure that that cash is not all taxed?
Well, A, if the multifamily market is buyable, investable, and not high like today, yes, just like the book, I would go from 8 to 80, just like I did in phase 2 or phase 3 of the book. That would be my preference. But what I want people to hear is, let's just assume multifamily is as crazy as single family. And again, we're assuming something that's not the case today, right? Let's just be clear. If suddenly single family homes in Fresno were 500 grand, today they're 350. If multifamily, which trades at about a 7 or a 6.5 cap, was suddenly at 3.5, I would sit in cash and I wouldn't give a fuck about taxes. I wouldn't care. I'd pay it. I don't care. I mean, if there's nothing to buy, I'm not going to buy a stupid deal. I would just sit on cash. I'd pay the IRS what they're owed, and I would just sit like a happy camper because I'm going to buy stuff at a discount. I sold that Norris Drive house for $264. I tried to buy it back at $75. I don't care that I paid $13,000 to the IRS for a gain. Who cares?
Right.
I would just sit there. Now, again, not my preference. I don't want to pay the IRS that much money. But if there's nothing to buy and the market's going crazy and people are overpaying, gladly sell, gladly cut the IRS their check, and just take a vacation for a year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is about this work from home trend and its impact on secondary cities. Because I see this has really been kind of a blessing in some ways to be able to work remote and, you know, live closer to family and have more space with the flexibility. Like, for instance, we're down in Southern California now, and we're going to stay another day because we can just hop on the computers, you know, and here it's really great. And last night I was talking with some people about these kind of VR headsets and Oculus and like the future of, you know, they were saying you can actually go into a virtual office.
Wow,
and
that'd be fun.
Like this other thing called the second world where they've created
lots of stuff coming. Yeah.
They've actually created Earth digitally, and you can buy real estate in there. But it just seems like, you know, in the future, we're not going to be in these anthills. You know, we're going to be able to spread out. So I guess my question is just looking for a little confirmation, or if that sounds likely.
Yeah, I think work from home is real. I think it's investable. I just talked about it actually on today's daily financial news. What we saw in the last year, and you're one of them, right? Young folks, Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, 30% of you moved last year, which you did, right? And what did you do? You moved from the big city somewhere drivable, right? And I would call Sacramento to San Francisco drivable, right? You don't have to jump on an airplane. Lots of people did that, right? From memory, like Houston went to Katy, Manhattan went to Brooklyn. I think that's real. And I think that continues. And I think that's investable, right? So you find these secondary cities, you know, which are drivable to San Francisco, and you just declare that's yours. Because what I think is going to happen is, yes, some people will work from home their entire careers for, going forward. Maybe go to the office once a year for a company kickoff or something. But I think what's more likely is people are going to work from home 4 days a week, maybe 8 days, maybe 80 or 90% of the time, but they have to go to the office one time because again, what I hear in the Bay Area, right? I'm sitting here 2 miles from Google, 5 miles from Facebook, and I have entire millennials and Gen Z millionaires around me. And what they're telling me is their creative expertise is slowing down. So I believe there will be some functions that have to go back to the office, but it won't be the anthills. It will be more like WeWork spaces, right? Creative outlets. So what I think is happening, and I think Google's doing this now, I think they're about to drop $7 billion on small creative centers across the country. But I think that's going to be good for suburbia, because I don't think Google is going to buy a lot of urban floors, because that's out. But they may buy, 10,000 square feet in Sacramento, 10,000 square feet in Bend, Oregon. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go, but I think that's investable. I think investing in the suburbs is a good idea. I am very happy to invest where I'm investing. I'm right now, not that I ever would, but I've never been more turned off by San Francisco, for example, than I am now. I think San Francisco's got 4 or 5 really bad years ahead of it. It will regentrify. It will become the next thing of something, but it will at a much lower price, in my opinion.
Okay, that's a good thing. I think for kind of to attract future talent potentially.
It has to. Yeah.
Yeah. I recently saw an interview with Mark Benioff talking about that sort of thing, where he said this is just the history of San Francisco. It goes boom, it goes bust, and then it rebirths into greater. So
yeah, I've been here almost 50 years. So yeah, this is just happens to be a down cycle, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. But I mean, if you close your eyes and you come back in 10 years, San Francisco will be still crazy expensive, and it'll just be something else.
Definitely. And it's a very dynamic and beautiful city. So I think
it's dynamic. I don't know if I'd say beautiful, but okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
Golden Gate Bridge with the fog coming in can be nice.
Yeah, sure. Go get your picture. But I mean, it's really cold. I mean, anyways, sorry, I digress.
Yeah. I think San Francisco is the kind of city where, it's really beautiful from afar.
Yes.
From looking in. And then when you get in, it's like, oh, what's that smell?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, people may not know this. I mean, I worked in San Francisco for the better part of a couple of years, took the train in. It sounds all quaint and cozy, but it's no, thank you.
It's got a real cool history, kind of a boom. It really is that boom bust rush city.
We're just in a bust. That's all.
Lost. So kind of another technical question I had. So I'm just recently starting to learn more about the stock market and how to invest and that sort of thing. I always just used the, I was working for the state, so I had their system. But now that I'm in private consulting, I've set up a 401k and all that stuff. But so I guess I'm playing catch up in some ways. But I'm wondering, did you ever borrow from your 401k?
Oh, yeah.
Because the more I put in the 401k, the less cash I have in my bank.
I borrowed from my 401k every year, and I paid it back every year. That was a huge part of our 2010 acquisition spree. Yeah, again, you have to check your employer, check the rules, My employer at the time allowed me to take up to half my 401k. I could then select my payback period. I happened to be in a job that allowed me to have chunks of money come in with commissions. So yeah, I borrowed from my 401k heavy, and I paid it back every year and then borrowed again. Yeah, absolutely. It was, yeah, absolutely.
What are the, I'm assuming there has to be some type of penalties or tax.
From the borrow?
Yeah.
Again, check your employer, all that. I'm not a tax accountant, blah, blah, blah. But no, you borrow, it's a loan. You pay yourself back interest. That money is out of whatever funds you're in, so you're only getting interest. If you were to quit or lose your job, then it's taxable. But as
Okay.
long as you're employed by at least in my case, as long as I was employed by the company and paying it back every paycheck, no tax consequences. It's a loan.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I'll check that out. So I have a question kind of peripheral to real estate investing.
Mhm.
Since I work in planning and this is kind of what we discuss. So if you were able to kind of systemically change our approach to the homeless crisis,
Mhm.
I kind of want to know what would you do to, because this is something we're all dealing with in
Sure.
California. It's
Yeah.
the whole state. I just drove the whole way and I saw people everywhere.
Yeah.
But what would you do to get these people housed?
Well, see, that's again, right. I hate to get, anyways, I guess to answer the question, when I think about the homeless crisis, I think there's not one homeless crisis. I think you need to ask yourself a
Mm,
slightly bigger question. I think you need to ask what is causing the housing crisis or who are they? Because I think there's kind of three buckets, generally speaking, right? There are the people that had some life event happen that would prefer to be housed, but because of a loss of job or a health crisis or whatever, domestic abuse, it could be a long list of terrible things that we wish on no one. They have become homeless. That's the first bucket. I believe those people deserve the most help. There needs to be some transitory or whatever it's called, some short term, dense but safe place to put them. Then there is the next camp of people who have made life choices on their own and have become addicted to a substance that allows them to take any discretionary cash and used on a substance that is not good for them or good all the way around. And I think you need to treat those differently, right? Because they have an addiction. And that's until you fix that, it doesn't give a rat's ass about the homeless population because that is their dragon. That is what they are fixing. And if you don't tackle that first, everything you spend is a waste of money. And then there's the last. I truly believe there are some people that choose to do that, choose to be homeless. So I think you need to treat them differently, and you need to stop being arrogant and treat everybody like everybody wants to live in a, studio or whatever the answer is, or these modular homes or whatever. I think you need to break it out because I think each category has one unique challenge that you need to affect. And where the mistake is, we say homeless and we throw a big umbrella over all of them. And there isn't one right answer for all three of those scenarios, in my opinion. So I think there isn't a homeless crisis. I think there is several different crises, in my opinion.
yeah. Okay. That's I understand what you're saying. So it sounds like it's actually not necessarily all about housing affordability. It's more of a systemic problem.
Yeah, I think
Sounds
there's
like.
three
So
things that cause it. Yeah, absolutely. Hmm.
great. Okay, that makes sense. Um, let me see what else I got here. Oh, okay. So I heard you talk in another video. If you had a perfect world, you'd have a condo in South America, you'd have a
Yeah.
condo somewhere else, condo here, there. So, do you or anybody close to you
Sean, for the first time you broke up a little bit. Can you ask that question one more time? Hey, Sean, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Michael, can you hear me?
Your hotel Wi-Fi broke up for the first time. Hi, Sean. We've done pretty good so far, but the hotel
Hey, can
Wi-Fi
you?
is letting us down. Oh, I think you're back.
Hello,
Hi, Sean.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I can hear
Hey,
you. Hi. Sorry. Hotel Wi-Fi.
okay,
So
sorry about that.
ask your question again. Yeah, condos, three different
Uh,
places, and then I didn't hear anything.
yeah. So With that being said, have you considered international real estate investing, or any other investors you know who specializes in that sort of thing?
So I've never, no. So first off, for me, rule of law and understanding what's important. Interestingly enough, I've just started looking at Bali of all places, because I think Bali's been hit really hard by the lack of tourism the last year. And but when I looked into Bali a little bit deeper, you don't own the land, right? You do a land lease or whatever it's called. You do like 30 years or 50 years. I'm not cool with that. I would have to own the property, much like we do in the United States. You'd have to have a government that, you can't just take the property away because they had a change in leadership. Um, for me, it's not something I wouldn't invest out of the country. Like I wouldn't build a portfolio of dozens of units somewhere else. I do not know of investor, but if anybody's watching this and does international investing, let me know. I'd love to talk to you. Um, but for me, it's more about, if I was single, my vision would be to have 3 condos in 3 warm places, and I would just bounce around the world. That'd be so great. But that's not Olivia's goal. And I'm a married man, and happy wife, happy life. So,
Okay, great, thanks. At the beginning of the pandemic, I heard you say this is the year of stock picking.
mhm.
So moving forward, do you still have that sentiment?
uh, I actually think we're in the midst of what I'll call the great stock rotation. Um, you know, yeah, I think again, assuming we actually make it out and we go from dark to light, and we don't have another variation or something that just shuts us down again, which, God, we can't do this anymore. I think we have a rotation going on. I think the winners of last year won't be the winners of the next year. That doesn't mean the winners of this year won't win in the next decade. I just think there's going to be a lot of people that suffer significant losses and get washed out, right? And yeah, so I think there's a rotation going on, growth to value. I think the people with, a price to earnings ratio of 300, I don't think those companies are going to have a PE of 300 in 6 months, and it's not going to be higher. It'll be lower. So yeah, right now, I think there's a rotation. I think people, when we went to lockdown, they're like, okay, who are going to be the tech winners? Because tech winners changing the world. There was a list of a dozen or so companies, maybe 20. Now that we're coming out of that, you're going to see people go to what's called value, because value's been getting kicked in the teeth the last year. So that's what I think's happening. But again,
Okay.
I own no stocks, everybody. I own no stocks, but I look every day, but I own no stocks. So
Yeah. Um, so I know somebody who recently hit the 2 out of 5 year living in their home
mm,
requirement, and they sold immediately once they hit 2 year,
yeah,
uh, and avoided the capital gains and purchased a home in Shingle Springs on 5 acres.
nice.
Yeah, really beautiful house. Went to visit recently. How underrated is that?
I believe it's
To-
really underrated, especially in California or any state where you have these appreciations. Folks, what he's talking about is if you live in your primary residence for 2 out of 5 years, you can sell. And if you're married, take the first 500 grand tax free. And again, you could do that every 2 years. When I started buying homes, I believe it was only once in your lifetime. That has now been changed. I believe that is underrated. I believe the live in, fix and flip. If you were a single, I mean, if you had no kids, it's harder with kids. Let's speak, especially babies. It's hard, right? Dust and debris and safety and all those concerns. But man, coming out of college single, house hack, be a young married dual income family, dude, live in flips
Mhm.
in high price markets are freaking genius. They are greatly underappreciated. That is I mean, think about that. Make 200 grand. And again, these are California numbers. Forgive me if you're watching this elsewhere, but make $200,000 in profit and flip off the IRS. Freaking awesome.
Yeah, and I think if it becomes a rental, but you're still within the 2 out of 5 year, part of that capital gains does get eaten up, right?
I don't know. I've never actually done it, but like in your situation, right? You lived in it till 2017. You obviously lived in it greater than 2 years. Um, you're right on the cusp, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of
Yeah, I think in your case, you might be 1 year over.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea would be,
Yeah, talk to an accountant because I think you've rented it 4 years. So you only
yeah,
have one live-in year of the 4. I don't know. Talk to an accountant, but
that's true. The thing is that house cash flows so well. I don't know that I'd want to,
yeah,
you
I
know,
don't, I don't, I'm not telling you to, but I was just trying to use that as a personal example. Yeah.
right. See, that's kind of what I was thinking. Well, this house has the potential to cash flow $1,000 if rent go
Yeah.
up in another year.
12 grand a year, man. That doesn't suck.
Yeah, versus making 150,000 in the pocket. But if I don't have anything to do with it,
Yeah.
then
It's not a good idea. Yeah.
um, kind of reaching the end of the questions I had. I
Sure.
had another one for you, which is, do you take any time off? You record a lot of videos.
Yeah, that's a good question. My wife was just giving me shit about that yesterday. For me, this is fun. I don't consider this work. I mean, folks, I was up today at 5:58, no alarm clock. My wife will not stroll out of bed till 9:30. So I need to do something with these hours. I used to go to the gym. The gyms are still shut in California, and I built a gym in my garage, so I don't need to go anymore. And I won't work out in my gym until it's warm, right? Because it'll be a nice day, at least here. So I need to do something. And I've always the things that I do for the daily financial news, I would do anyway. I've been doing that for 20 plus years, maybe 25 now. I just now take notes. That's the only thing that's changed. So I don't consider that work. I haven't changed my life in one iota. I do not edit videos. Like I won't edit this video. We had a little 45-second thing. Oh, well, I don't care. So I don't consider any of this work. So no, I don't feel like I work at all. I have a wonderful life. And if I could live my life and help thousands of people have a little better life, I need to do that. And I'm having fun. So yeah, I actually don't think I work.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate the fact that you share your experience and knowledge with the rest of us. It's super helpful,
Very cool.
and it's a
Awesome.
great community you created here.
Yeah, I
So
hope I hope it out. I hope it's going to eventually get to a point where um I guess I'll just be the moderator because that's already happening. You're seeing people be consistent contributors and helping and all of that. That's what I hope happens. And I'm
yeah,
just going to be there to, hey, you're in the penalty box. Don't do those things.
right.
But yeah, it's the one rental at a time story brand is changing lives. I just recorded my goals video and we got 4 students doing deals last week. It I get a bigger kick out of a student closing a deal than myself adding another rental. I mean, it's myself adding another rental. It sounds bad, but it's like buying shoes. It doesn't change anything.
Mhm.
But man, I hear about a student getting their first deal. Freaking awesome.
Yeah. Do you plan on having in-person events eventually?
I certainly will go to real estate meetups and when invited, talk there. Will I ever host my own? No idea. I haven't
Okay,
thought that far ahead.
great.
Cool. Well,
I think
Sean,
we
thank you for doing this. Thanks for signing up the course. Thank you for allowing me to record this. My
yeah,
intention is to produce enough content that people can consume it, see what I'm all about, buy the course if they want to. If they don't worry about it. But Sean, thank you very much. Enjoy your rest of your day.
thanks, Mike.
You got it.